I'm a fan of yours. I follow you. I think you're funny. I think you're very young. I feel like you're like half my
I'm
age.
I'm I'm only 12. Yeah, I'm 25, but I am young.
25. So you're like a voice of another generation. Like you're like, are you a millennial? Is that what that is?
I guess I'm like the oldest. I'm the oldest Gen Z or the youngest millennial. I think is where it fits.
Okay. So
Yeah.
what do you think are the main differences between I guess I'm Gen X and you're either Gen Z or millennial, but like how do you think your generation thinks about food differently than my generation?
I think I feel like a little sandwich between. I feel like like a younger generation. I don't know. I feel like they all get so much of their food from the internet in the way that I do too. And I feel like I was like in a very millennial-y way. Like only care about food because of tasty videos. Like that's what made me fall like when I was like in high school and college. And
What's a
so
what's a tasty video? I'm like, this is a good example. This tasty video, like the one where like you just see things getting piled on top of each
yeah,
other.
The BuzzFeed ones where it was like, like the classic like shooting from above, but like they also all were like vile. They all were like this
Yeah.
is like hamburger guacamole dip or something like that. But yeah, I remember like I feel like Gen Z very much like thing trends pop like I remember like last year like the whole like like basically what is like a frap coffee, like the whole like
Yes. What
frothy
was
coffee
that?
thing.
I don't even know what that
I
is.
they're all things that like already exist, or like the TikTok pasta. Like I feel like
Yes,
it
I
like
saw that.
Gen Z is very much like hops on trends of food in a way that like I think millennials don't as much.
Now, is Gen Z, this is really a stupid question. I should know the answer, but is Gen Z younger or older than millennials?
Younger, yeah, younger. So I think that like 1996, 1997 is the cutoff.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, that was actually very insightful. That was a hard question to lead with, and you had some quick answers. So you're going to be a great guest. But maybe you
Okay,
could tell,
cool.
yeah. But I was looking at your Twitter. I was looking at stuff. So tell us a little bit about, like, I know you do comedy. I know that you have written for things, but maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, just for people who aren't familiar with your work.
Yeah, I always like say I don't identify as a comedian, which is not true. I guess
Yeah.
I am, but I work in digital for late night. I worked at Full Frontal Samantha Bee, and now I'm at Tuning Out the News. And then I also do comedy myself, and I'm a writer myself. So I like just do stand up and like comedic plays and stuff where I can in Brooklyn, rarely in Manhattan.
We're in
Yeah, and then
Brooklyn.
a lot of stuff at like the Brooklyn Comedy Collective, which is like the spiritual successor of the Annoyance. A lot of just I used to do a show at a CBD pop. You know the CBD brand Recess,
No.
like the seltzer. It's like this like weird it's like CBD seltzer
Uh-huh.
Recess, and I used to do a show at their pop up space, and that was really weird. And now I'm doing a show at an ice cream shop. So just truly, I like to go to do shows at like fun places. Yeah.
I used to live in Park Slope, and there was like an alt comedy club in Park Slope that I don't even know if it's there anymore, but that was where everyone used to be. This was in the early 2000s. So you were probably not even
I'm in
born
Park
yet.
Slope now. Yeah, I
Oh,
live. Is
yeah.
it Union Hall?
Yeah. Okay. That's still
Yeah,
there.
I
Okay.
Union
Got
Hall
it.
is. I go to Union Hall all the time.
So you live in Park Slope.
Yes, I'm in Park Slope.
I,
I'm like
I used,
5 blocks from Union Hall.
okay. So maybe you live, I don't want you to give out your address in case there are crazy stalkers listening, but I used to live right near the Israeli restaurant Miriam. I don't know if that's
I
still there.
live around the corner from Miriam.
Oh, well, they just gave it away. Don't, if you're listening to this,
Oh,
don't stalk and
whoops.
murder
I actually
Zach.
don't
Yeah.
live near Miriam. I actually live in Manhattan. Miriam actually just opened a new restaurant that they opened like a fast casual version of Miriam next
Okay.
door. Yeah.
I lived, oh, it was next door. Wait, this is really interesting to me. Like immediately next door, like right next door.
Immediately next door, yeah, they opened a fast casual restaurant. Like connected,
So,
I think shares a kitchen.
okay, well, that's so interesting to me because I lived in the apartment above that space and there was always this empty corridor. And so in the winters, like cold air would blow through that empty restaurant space because nobody ever built a restaurant, and our apartment would like become freezing and our like spaceport heating would freeze up and not work, and we would huddle around space heaters. It was very the musical Rent.
Oh my god. Did it have like that mural on it? You know,
Nope.
that red mural. There was like a red mural before they built this restaurant, and I think it was painted by the Miriam people, but now they blew out the walls. They built it like overnight. It opened in like 2 weeks.
So are you from New York?
No, I'm from the suburbs of Chicago.
Okay, so what brought you to NYC?
Mostly work. My sister lived here, but yeah, I was like, I had worked in New York for a summer. I'd worked in LA for a summer when I was in college, and then I had gotten a job at Sam B. And so I was like, yeah, this makes sense, and I'm going to move here. And like, I went to college on the East Coast, so like all my friends came here, and I was like, and now it's this weird thing where it's like, oh, I actually don't want to live anywhere else, but I wasn't like that fervent about it when I moved here.
That's funny. So did you grow up in Chicago with like love for Chicago foods and now you're in New York and like loving the New York food? Like what's the main difference would you say between like the food in Chicago and the food in New York?
Well, I grew up. My mom, in Chicago, there's like this big restaurant company, Let Us Entertain You, and it's like it rules the city. And my mom was like very big on the points at Let Us Entertain You, and so I only ever went to Let Us Entertain You restaurants, and like we would like save up at the end of the year and go to one of the really expensive ones because like we had like built up points over the years. And so I feel like New York is not like that, where like there's these like restaurant holding companies, these like big restaurant holding companies that you know, but in Chicago, like Let Us Entertain You ruled all, and you knew that like there was some level of quality to them, and so like I like there are so I most restaurants I know in Chicago are lettuce, and like I've
Like
ignored
what? Like what's an
others.
example of a let us entertain you restaurant?
Food Life I think actually just closed, but Food Life was like the pinnacle because it was like the food court version of all their restaurants. But Hub 51 is a really good one. There's Joe Stone Crab is Let Us Entertain You,
Oh,
which they also have
okay.
other places.
Yeah, well, it's from
Um,
Florida where I'm from.
oh really? Yeah, that's
Yeah.
Let Us Entertain You.
So was it like almost like a strict rule that like your mom would only eat at these restaurants, or would she get mad if you wanted to go somewhere else?
I think that I think that it was definitely always like very much encouraged that we go to a lettuce restaurant. Like there were places in the suburbs maybe we would go, but like if we were eating dinner in the city, because I lived like maybe 25 minutes outside the city, like
Uh-huh.
we were eating at a lettuce restaurant. Like there was no other option.
It's okay when you got to New York, you're like, oh my God, there's like all these restaurants that aren't let us entertain you restaurants and a
It's like
world of
honestly, it's a vast landscape. Like I don't know how to categorize the restaurants here.
yeah, well, that's fun. I mean, Brooklyn, it was funny. I was just in New York, and we were staying in Williamsburg, and it just felt to me like, and this was always the case that Brooklyn was cooler than Manhattan, but now it just felt like Manhattan felt dead to me in a way that where it just felt like literally everything was in Brooklyn, and just at night, everything like driving through Manhattan was like empty. Maybe I'm over exaggerating, but like, but it didn't feel like it had that youthful vitality that you just see everywhere in Brooklyn. So it feels like everything is completely shifted. Am I right or am I wrong?
Yeah, I mean, my friends and I will always be like, "Where should we go to dinner?" And they'll be like, "We should go to Manhattan." And then we'll like look at each other and be like, "I don't know any restaurants in Manhattan." Like we know some, but like it's like not like I don't know any new restaurants. Like I don't have like ideas of places to go in Manhattan really.
That's really funny. Well, maybe we should just dive in and get into your therapy
Yeah.
session. So tell me, what did you have for lunch today?
I had like a very good Brooklyn restaurant. I had Court Street Grocers, which is a really good sandwich place in Carroll. They have one in Williamsburg too, but a really good sandwich place in Carroll Gardens. I was home for Yom Kippur, and I just got back last night, and so I don't have any groceries, so I just got Court Street, which is like always my default. I feel like
And what kind of sandwich did you get?
I got the cauliflower, which is like it's like the hot honey. I actually have like some of it still sitting. I didn't finish it, but it's like a hot honey cauliflower broccoli rabe on the crispy bread. It's very good. I think it normally like the regular ollie is like turkey, but I'm not a vegetarian, but I prefer the cauliflower
Oh, wow. Wait, so is broccoli rabe and what was the other thing on it?
and cauliflower.
Oh, okay, that's a very cruciferous lunch. That's a category of vegetable that it could be a little intense for the middle of the day, but I admire that. Well, it's funny. One of our guests, Mayuk Sen, tried to go to Court Street Grocers for his lunch, but the line was too long, so he ended up going home and just heating up some leftovers. So for you, did you have to wait in a long line to get your sandwich?
No, I did get it delivered because I was working, but you have to like schedule it. You have to be smart about it. So I knew I wanted it, and I like scheduled it for delivery because like it can get, especially during the pandemic when it was like they had set up this system where like they'd like post it your name on the window and everything. Like it was the biggest crowd I think I was in for the first time during the pandemic when I went once to pick it up because like there were like 40 people waiting outside, and it was like the biggest group of people I'd seen. This must have been like April or May 2020.
Well, the first thing I want to ask you about, which is pretty relevant, and it's something I'd like to talk about because I'm Jewish too, is the Yom Kippur part of it. So, did you fast?
I did fast, yes.
And did you grow up in a very religious family?
I grew up. My mom is pretty religious, and yeah, we belong to like a pretty conservative temple. So I grew up, I would say like very, very religious, but not very observant.
Oh, can you explain more about that?
Like we didn't go to temple all the time, but we like followed all the rules. But I feel like there are people who are like my cousins and such are like go to temple a lot more than we do, but like never kept kosher and like aren't and belong to more like reform temples.
Did you keep kosher?
We like kept kosher up until each bar mitzvah. So we were like full kosher when until my sisters got bat mitzvah, and then we started being kosher outside the house after that. And then after my bar mitzvah, we had a fridge in the garage where we'd have non kosher food, but we still don't eat, like we won't put it in the fridge in the house and stuff like that.
And are you the same way in your own independent life?
Yeah, I never started eating pork. I eat shellfish, but I like just always held on to that. And we always ate milk and meat. That was a rule. My mom was like, I like cheeseburgers too much. But I always ate milk and meat, and I still don't eat pork, but I do eat shellfish.
It's funny because my dad's grandparents, I think, were kosher. And so like, but I think the classic Jewish thing is you could have like wonton soup and things like that. Like a Chinese restaurant, you can break all the kosher rules. But I remember like he wouldn't eat, he didn't like cheese, my dad. Like he just was not a cheese guy. Like if there was like I remember we went to Balthazar once and they had this French onion soup that was burbling with like Gruyere, and he just hated the smell. But I think it's because he didn't grow up with any of that really in the house. But like the main thing that I think of like about being kosher is like a ham, like the idea of like making a big glazed ham. That like I've been cooking for 15 years and I've never made a glazed ham.
Yeah.
Because that feels like the ultimate antithesis of Jewish food to me.
To me, like a bacon. Like I've never had bacon. Like
Really? You've never had
like
bacon? That's delicious.
I grew up with my mom would call it kosher bake. Like there was like a butcher that made like beef bacon or whatever, and like it has such a distinct taste and such a distinct smell. It like really is not like what real bacon is like, assumed, because it's very dry. But yeah, I've accidentally eaten it in a salad or something like that, but like I've never had bacon. And to me, it's like whenever I consider something, when like I look at a menu and I see bacon on it, I'm like, I'm Jewish. I don't want that. I don't want that.
Interesting. So do you feel like you'll carry your parents' traditions or your religious traditions from your childhood into more of your adulthood? Like, do you think you'll continue being observant and all that stuff?
Yeah, I think it's funny because like I hated it when I was a kid, and I like hated being kosher, and I hated going to Hebrew school, and now I'm like, my kids will go to Hebrew school 3 times a week. They will not eat shellfish. Like I think I'm like, they have to go through what I went through.
That's so funny. I just had dinner last night with my friend Rachel, and she was saying the opposite because she has a son. And she was just sort of saying that she doesn't want to torture him with Hebrew school the way that she was. And I kind of feel the same way. I hated Hebrew school so much. But I'm curious. That's actually why I find it really fascinating that you're so in touch with your Judaism. And is it just like, do you feel like for you it's just a comfort thing? Like it just reminds you of your family and reminds you of your childhood? Or is it a spiritual thing? Is it a structural thing?
I feel like it's very much an identity thing. Like I do think it's like I've thought like this is like I've thought before that like when I like, you know that thing when you like walk through a door, maybe this is an acting exercise but like there's like an acting exercise where you're like you like when you walk through a door, the first thing that goes through is like the first thing you have, so whether it's like your hips or your nose or whatever. And I remember thinking, I was like, the first thing that goes through a door for me is that I'm Jewish. Like that's the first part of my identity. And so I always feel like I like that is the main qualifier of my entire life, even though obviously so many other things build it up. But I'm like, I want my kids to have that same feeling, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. I mean, for me, being gay sort of dwarfed, for lack of a better verb, my being Jewish eventually. But I think but before I came out and like during my teenage years, for sure, like being Jewish was my main identity. So it is interesting how like, you know, the thing that you cling on to can become the thing that you identify yourself most as, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I've thought before, I've been like, I think I'm more Jewish than I am gay. But maybe as I get older that will change. But I've always been like, I'm Jewish before I'm gay.
Well, it's funny because I feel like it's probably a generational thing too, because when I came out in 2001, so like 20 years ago, wow, 20 years ago, you know, like my Jewish family, thank you. My family, it just they weren't ready to digest that. Like it was kind of shocking to them. And I feel like the Jewish community where I came from was pretty conservative in the sense, like politically conservative. So I think I had a need to sort of cut myself away from my religion a little bit to sort of be able to live my gay life. And I feel like your generation is coming up in a period now where it's like more part of the culture. There's gay marriage, there was Will and Grace, there was Queer Eye. I mean, there's just like so many things on TV and just in the culture in general. So maybe that makes it easier to hold on to your Jewish roots because you didn't have to separate yourself from it as much.
Yeah, I think that like there's just so much like explicitly Jewish gay culture now. Like I think, I mean, maybe Transparent was a big thing, but I feel like there's so many things that are like they feel like the two are linked in a way where they're not. You know, like there's so much. There's even a really hot Jewish rabbi in Park Slope.
Really?
So yeah, but yeah,
is he on Instagram?
he is. Yes.
Should we give him a plug, or is that
I don't. I think I mean, he is like a public figure. His Instagram handle is funny. He is just very hot. His Instagram handle is official Debbie Friedman, like the famous cantor.
Okay. Official Debbie Friedman. Okay, got it.
So I'm gonna plug this hot rabbi who I've never met.
Oh, please. No, I mean, the people who are listening to this are never going to like, tell this rabbi that you did this.
I've considered, okay. I've considered joining that temple because it's like close to me.
Interesting. So, okay. So in terms of your food life, so do you cook a lot?
I do. Yeah. I only like have started cooking more in the past few years, but I do like to cook a lot. I really like to cook without turning on any heat. So like, I really like to like make a lot of different salads and things like that don't require heat. Maybe that's just the summer in New York, but I also feel like I find myself doing as much as I can without having to like make my apartment hotter.
So what are some of your go-to recipes?
I make a lot of different kinds of Greek salad. There's one that I stole the recipe from a restaurant that I like, where it's like a chickpea Greek salad with shaved broccoli. That's really good. You love
your cruciferous vegetables, broccoli.
I do. I really do.
Cauliflower,
yeah.
broccoli rabe. Okay, yeah. So that you shave it. It's like on a mandolin slicer.
Yeah, it's a chickpea tahini, like broccoli. It's very good. I used to be really scared of knives, and somehow I feel a lot more comfortable on a mandolin, which I think is not maybe more dangerous than a knife.
It is. I have a crappy mandolin, and so I think if I got a nicer mandolin, it would be safer. But my crappy one is like plastic, and I feel like I'm always going to slice my finger off when I use it. But I've actually gotten really into it when I make coleslaw now, because that's one of the few things where I totally notice the difference between like shaving cabbage on a mandolin versus slicing it, because it's so thin, it makes the coleslaw lighter.
I love coleslaw. Yeah, I love like and I sometimes like I like to buy the pre-bought like shaved stuff, but like the mandolin is just like it makes everything like consistent. Whereas like I'm so bad with knives because I'm so scared of them. I even own like those knife gloves, like those like metal knife gloves. I'm less scared now, but I used to be so scared that like I think as I got over my fear of knives, I started cooking more.
It's so funny because I'm working on a secret project right now related to this podcast. And one of the categories in the project is about fear, like the fear that we have about cooking. And one of the things is about knives. And it's funny because it's ironic in the sense that like the sharper your knife, the safer you are. Maybe it's not ironic, but that's Alanis Morissette's sense of ironic. But like I think like a dull knife is dangerous. So a super sharp knife is safe. But I feel like my friends who are scared of knives are scared of a super sharp knife. I mean, are your knives very sharp?
They are. I have like these. But I broke them because I like bought a sharpener because I was like, this is safer. Yes. And then I sharpened ceramic knives and that broke them.
Oh no, don't do that. No,
I know.
Yeah, get a Wusthof, get a like a stainless steel. What's it called? Like a carbon steel knife. But I've learned. I mean, like if you curl your fingers, you know that whole thing of like curling your fingers and making a guard with your left hand and then like slicing down like a chef. Then you're safe. You're fine. You need like an intervention. Yeah. I really like, and when people like hold knives precarious, like I'm so like, I really like, it's probably one of my biggest fears is knives. I like have never cut myself other than I cut my thumb on a bowl of, on like the top lid of a can when I was a kid. Yeah. But other than that, like I don't have a reason to be so scared, but like, I've gotten way over, especially during the pandemic, I got way over my fear, but I like when I would like cook something, I would ask friends to cut for me. Like I like
I like really have made huge strides, but I like was really scared of knives. My roommate has a really good knife that I use a lot more, and that one I feel better on. But the ceramic knives were like too sharp almost. Like they could like you could go near a piece of paper and they will cut in half.
That's good. That's what you want. You want your knife to
Yeah.
slice through a piece of paper. Well, it's funny. I feel like you almost have to cut yourself to realize that it's not going to be as bad as you think it is. You know what I mean?
Really?
Well,
Yeah.
it's like burning yourself. It's like when you see chefs on TV, like Nigella Lawson's always like, I have asbestos hands, and you'll see her like flipping something with her hands in a skillet. It's like I think the more that I've cooked over time, the more I realize these things that terrified me at the beginning, like searing something or like frying something or slicing something. It's like you almost have to like burn yourself a little bit and slice yourself a little bit to be like, okay, like I mean, generally speaking, I'm not suggesting you cut your finger off, but like I've had
Have you had
moments
to get
where
stitches?
no, but the worst thing I ever did was I think the hardest thing to cut is a butternut squash or squash in general
Mm-hmm.
with a hard shell or a hard skin. And I've like pushed a knife down and slipped and like it went like into my fingernail. And so it just really hurt and it bled and it was scary and upset. But I was like, okay, like that happened. And then now I'm just like much more cautious when I cut a butternut squash. But I feel like it's never as bad as you think it's gonna be. You look for people who can't see Zach right now, he has his hand over his face.
I can't
He's
hide it.
mortified. Yeah.
Like
So
I get so secondhand scared too when I hear about that kind of thing.
but that's funny. Well, I wonder what that fear is like. What else are you afraid of?
Knives are a really big one. Yeah, I don't know, I get really scared of knives. In general, things I'm scared of.
Yeah, because I wonder if this relates to something deep in your childhood that we can unpack and then help you through your knife journey.
I don't know. If I had to like psychoanalyze it, my dad buys a lot of knives off Amazon now. So maybe, but that's like later in life. My dad's like obsessed with buying knives on Amazon.
Okay, this is
But
great. So it's an Oedipal struggle. That's what it sounds like.
yes,
Yes, their dad. What do you mean he buys knives on Amazon?
I mean, like like that man and Wish.com. Have you heard of Wish.com?
No, what's that? Don't
It's
tell me
like
because I'll go on there right away and spend a lot of
it's like
money.
all buying gimmicks. Like my dad bought up like a stack of like fake $100 bills with Obama's face on them. Like makes no sense. But like he buys a lot of knives on there too. He like loves like switchblades and things like that. And he's been buying a lot. Like whenever I like literally I was home yesterday and I was like packing my backpack to like go to the airport and he was like, "Do you want to take one of these with you?" And it was just like a knife that shot up and I was like, "No, I don't want that and I will never want that."
In an airport, you would get stopped by the police. He was like punking you,
Oh, he brings multiple knives on planes.
but you can't do that.
I don't know how he gets away with it. I really don't know how.
That's so weird. Well, I hope the federal investigators aren't listening right now, or
I know, I
FAA.
know.
Wow. Okay, so your dad collects knives. You're afraid of knives. I feel like there's something there. We'll come back to that
Yeah,
later.
something
But
there.
in terms of your cooking, like where did you learn how to cook?
I think I learned how to cook with my mom and my stepmom. My stepmom is a really, really good cook, and very much. And also, it's like my roommate is a good cook, and I admire the way she cooks, where she like doesn't plan. Like I get very anxious when I cook, and I'm like, I have to do this right, and I like have to follow this very closely. And my roommate is very much like just throw anything in, and my stepmom was very much like that too, where my stepmom just like throws anything in and it's good. And my stepmom also like gets really hooked on something. So like the past couple of months, especially, like she has been like like making chili, and like now she has chili on the stove every single day. Like has this same eats the same thing every day. And growing up, like she would like go through a recipe for like 3 or 4 months, and she just makes the same thing every day. My mom really likes to cook, and my mom really likes to make a lot of like Jewy food, and then a lot of like things she sees on Good Morning America. So it's like one of her like classics is like barbecue potato chip chicken, like that kind of thing. And so
Oh, what's that? That sounds good.
it's like where you just like instead of like breading something with like breadcrumbs, you crumple up barbecue potato chips and then use that to make chicken.
Do you fry it or bake it?
You bake it.
So what are some of the Jewy things that she makes?
She makes it brisket. She'll make like a lot of like this, like she makes like this chicken with kishki stuffed inside a lot.
What's kishki?
Kishki's like a potato. It's like a Eastern European like potatoy thing. It's kind of like I don't know exactly what it is, but it is. I think it is like potatoy.
Wait, isn't that like from like a Eugene Levy comedy thing from like a Christopher Guest movie where he's like Bubby made a kishka? Yeah, that's like from
Yeah.
like Best in Show or something. Okay, anyway, sidebar. So do you make Jewy food?
I want to more, but I don't. I like have like made. I've made I've made some Jewy desserts, but I haven't really made. I want to cook more Jewy food, but I also don't. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't made that much. I've made
Wait,
matzo soup.
do you follow Jake Cohn, the author
Yes,
of
he's really
Jewish?
good.
Yeah, he was on my podcast recently, and
I listened to that episode. He's really good.
but he's all about that. You should go to one of his seders, or not seders, sorry, Shabbat dinners. He hosts
Yeah.
these big Shabbat dinners. But wait, keep going. You were about to say something.
I made black and white cookies, and they ended up tasting like soap. I must have used something that had soap on there, and that was good. Bad. I made babka bread pudding, and that was good, but that also wasn't that involved. I'm not like a really good cook. I just like to. Like I just like enjoy.
So is your roommate a friend that you had before, or did you meet her just because she was your roommate?
She's a friend. She's a friend that I had before, and we do a bit of comedy together, and we met in college. Yeah.
But the reason I'm asking is because with the pandemic, like, were you holed up with your roommate like for most of the time and cooking for each other, or how did that work for you?
I was in a different apartment for the first half of the pandemic. I was for like the deep pandemic, like, you know, when it was like really scary. Like I was in an apartment with two other roommates until September of 2020, and those two roommates did not cook at all. So those two roommates actually like would like really enjoy when I would cook for them, and that was when I went through like a really deep Allison Roman phase after she was canceled. I really was not that into it, and then I found out she was canceled, and I was like, I'm gonna secretly make all her recipes now. And so I made them a lot of Allison Roman recipes when I lived with them, but they didn't cook really at all. And then I moved in with my current roommate, and we were together like throughout the deep winter, and we'd make like a lot of soups and things like that together. And she really like just like throws things at. She's like sitting right here. She's probably like not paying attention at all, but she
just missing some good content. This is a great
interview. High praise.
Yeah. Well, so when you have a roommate, this is like reminding me of like back in my 20s when I had a roommate. But I remember like there's always like that thing of like the dishes and the food shopping, and did you drink my milk or did you use my eggs? Like, so how does that work for you guys?
We're pretty good about it. My old roommate, who I hope does not listen to this, used to open my food, which that was like the line where I'm like, you can't cross that. Like, I even think finishing food is like, just tell me and I'll buy something else, or buy it for me if you finished it. But she used to like open unopened food, and I'd be like, you can't start something I haven't started.
Oh, like even milk, like in like
yeah,
eggs
crackers, anything, like cheese. Like I would buy something and not get to it yet, and then she'd open it, and I'd be like, that is not fair. My current roommate and I are pretty good. We have a portable. I like refuse this apartment. I've had apartment dishwashers in my first two apartments in New York, and this one didn't. So we have a portable dishwasher that I bought on Facebook Marketplace that I like wheeled over here from a few blocks away. And so
does it work pretty well?
It works amazingly. It's like the greatest invention in the world, and everyone should have one.
It's funny because my Park Slope days, we didn't have a dishwasher. So I just trained myself to just like scrub dishes clean till they shined. And now we have a dishwasher, and Craig, my partner, like thinks I'm insane because like I will wash the dishes with a sponge and like really clean them and then put them in the dishwasher for like a second polish, but they don't really need to go in there. So you're lucky to have one.
I still scrub them before because I'm like, this thing is not that powerful, but like at least I like know in my mind that they're clean.
So you live in Park Slope, so are you more often like home cooking on a typical night or during the day, or do you mostly eat out at restaurants?
I work from home, so I feel like I'm more often. Sorry, my phone rang. I'm more often cooking at home, but I'll like make like a big batch. Like I'll make like a big batch of tuna salad or a big batch of like chicken salad or something like that, and like nurse that over like 4 days. So that I feel like that's what I'm eating a lot, and then I usually try to only eat out on the weekends just to like not only save money but also to eventize it a little because I like really like to like look forward to it. But I'll like pick things up around here. Miriam's new fast casual thing is nice.
I'm so happy they're still open. I remember they had this brunch special. It was like crispy dough. It was like this big fried piece of like just savory dough that had like eggs on it and shug. Is that right? Like the kind of.
I haven't had that. That sounds really good.
Oh, it was really good. So what are some of your favorite New York/Brooklyn restaurants?
I really love Court Street Grocers, and I really love their sit-down restaurant that they opened in Boerum Hill, High Room. It's actually awkward. My upstairs neighbor works for them, but didn't when we first met. So I like told him how much I loved Court Street Grocers, and then he and I like have a shirt, and like then he started working there, and now it's like I don't want to wear my shirt around him. He like parks their van outside our building. Like I'm so embarrassed to be such a fanboy of them because he works for them. But I really love them. I really love now I'm like blanking on places that I like. I really love a Greek place called Avli that's really good in Carroll Gardens. My favorite bagel is Court Street Bagels. I used to live in Cobble Hill, so I like love a lot of restaurants over there. Um,
What's your bagel
yeah,
order? Like, what do you get when you get a bagel?
I have three different bagel orders. I feel like no one should actually only have one. Like
Oh, really?
I'll
Because I
either
only
get
have
like
one. Wow, awkward.
really.
No,
Oh no,
I
what is
just,
yours?
I mean, mine's an everything bagel. Like, I mean, I shake it up a little bit. It's like either like smoked salmon or whitefish salad with
Okay.
cream cheese and then the works.
I feel like it depends on the time of day for me too. Like if it's earlier, I'll do salmon and lettuce, tomato, not lettuce, tomato, onion, caper, cream cheese,
Yeah,
whatever.
that's correct.
And then if it's later in the day, I'll do tuna salad with cucumber and tomato
I've never had
on
tuna salad
pumpernickel.
on a bagel before. That's really interesting.
Oh my gosh, with pumpernickel, that is the best.
Pumpernickel, you know, it's so funny. Calvin Trillin, who's a food writer, wrote an essay in one of his books that made me want to be a food writer. He wrote a book called Feeding a Yen. And the first chapter was about how his daughters moved away, but they promised they would move back to New York if he could find a good pumpernickel bagel because they used to eat pumpernickel bagels growing up and he couldn't find one. So that you just made me think of that. Sorry, that was a
Oh my gosh,
sidebar.
there's really good ones all over. What's that book
Yeah, so
called?
Feeding a Yen by Calvin
Eating
Trillin.
Ian.
Yeah. And what was the third bagel order that you like?
This is the one where I'm like, if I'm really hungover or like I'm absolutely starved, I'll do fried egg, avocado, cheddar, tomato, onion on an egg, everything. But that's like a monster bagel. And without, oh, did I say avocado too? Yeah.
I admire your adventurousness with bagels. I think that like in terms of my religiousness and conservative Judaism, it's only as it applies to bagels. That's like the most shocking thing I ever saw in my life was my grandfather once. I think we were like sitting Shiva for something, or it was like a holiday. I remember he had like two halves of a bagel and he put like smoked salmon cream cheese on one half and then he put whitefish salad on the other half and then closed it up and ate it together. And I was like, oh my God, that is crazy. Yeah.
That's really good. Well, that's like Cynthia Nixon's like cinnamon raisin lox bagel. Like people just
Oh,
can be
really?
disgusting.
No, but I liked it. I was like, wow, he's really going for it. Yes, cinnamon on a bagel. That's a whole other thing. Okay, I wanted to ask you about being a comedian at such a young age, like going into comedy in your early 20s. Like, I mean, with Jewish parents like mine were like classically or cliche parents who wanted me to be a doctor or a lawyer, so much so that I ended up going to law school, which was a mistake. But did your parents support this idea of you doing comedy and how did you follow this path?
I think growing up in the suburbs of Chicago, like it was like, and being like a little gay kid, like instead of doing sports camp, I would do some theater. I did a lot of theater growing up, but I also would do like, I did like Second City camp and I did like improv camp growing up as a kid. And so I think that it felt like this like inevitability almost that like I did it from such a young age that I was like, yeah, of course I want to keep doing this. And it was funny. It wasn't even like until I was like later in college or even moved to New York that I realized I was like, oh yeah, I'm pursuing comedy. Like I knew I wanted to work in comedy TV, but it never really clicked for me almost that I was like pursuing it because I was like, I just have always done this. And I went to college and I like studied writing and I like wrote in college, but I was like, yeah, like this is this and whatever. And like I think it like didn't all congeal until I got here. I was like, oh yeah, this is what I'm doing and I'm here doing this. My dad is both my parents are very funny, but my dad's always been like, I should be a stand-up comedian, and obviously he should. And I think doing a lot of theater like led me to that. But my sister's an actor, and my other sister is a teacher, and my other sister like works with elderly people. So like I feel like none of the like the traditional doctor lawyer was shoved on us. My mom is a lawyer, and
Okay.
she always says she wishes she was a news anchor, and so I feel like she never wanted to push being a lawyer on us.
That's really interesting. So you have three sisters,
Four. Oh, I have a younger sister who's a babysitter.
four sisters, and you're the only boy?
Yes.
Wow. I mean, of course you're gay with four sisters.
Yeah.
It's like, how could you not be? Were you very close to your sisters?
Yeah, very close. We're all within 4 years of each other, so relatively close in age. Two are stepsisters, but I've had them since I was like 2 years old. And so we were very, very close. Like there's stories of like us like at family gatherings where there's other kids and like standing with our arms crossed and like not wanting to interact with any other kids. But yeah, like my other sister, my oldest sister is an actor, and so we did a lot of theater together growing up, and so like I feel like that was always a big part of everything.
So tell me about, I'm so curious because like, I've done comedy writing and I like humor and all that stuff. I mean, I think this podcast is funny. I can't tell, but what's it like to go up on a stage and say, okay, I'm going to be a stand-up comic. Like I am going to now do stand-up comedy. Like, were you terrified when you first started doing that, or was it natural? And how much did you prepare and how much did you improvise? What's it,
I
how
think
did
it
you do
was
it?
the first, well, the my first experience doing it in New York. I had done it a bit in like a little bit in high school and college, but never that
Where'd you go to
like
college?
I went to BU, Boston University.
Okay, so that's a big stand-up comedy town, Boston. I feel like a lot of
Yeah,
comedians come from there.
and I didn't do it like I had other friends who were like very into like the stand up scene in Boston when we were in college. I didn't really engage in that, but the first time I did it in New York, because I like came to New York thinking that I like really wanted to do improv. Like I've always loved improv. Like growing up, I did it. Like I've loved it, and then I moved to New York, and it was like right as the UCB bubble was bursting. And
Mm.
so I like improv is now like, quote unquote dead or whatever in New York. And so I was like, oh, I guess this is the thing I'm going to do now. And the first time I did a mic in New York, I went to this mic in the basement of Playa Betty's on the Upper West Side at like whatever comedy club is there. And this girl who I won't name, but she's very Twitter famous, was there. And I like did my set. It was very prepared. It was not good, but whatever. I was like 21 or 20 at the time. Like I was very, very young. And this girl who is very Twitter famous, like slowly raised her hand. Well, this is the other thing. It was at 4 p.m. on a Sunday, and it was a feedback mic, which means people give you notes after, which like I've never heard of ever since
Oh
this.
my God, I can't imagine.
When I tell people about this, they're like, that doesn't exist. I'm like, I know, but it does exist here, and it still exists there. But she slowly raised her hand, and she goes, were those stories true, or were you just doing a voice? And like, I will admit I was like maybe doing a little like, maybe like trying to put on a stand-up voice, but it was all my life. It was all true stories. And I was like, no, those stories were true. And then there was silence. And then another girl goes, I really like your shirt. And that was like all
Oh
people
my
said to me
God.
after.
That's
And
awful.
I don't think I was good when I went, but I was also like, this is evil. It's 4 p.m. on a Sunday. Like everyone needs
Yeah.
to pray a little and then be nicer. I don't know. Like,
Well, what's funny is I went to NYU grad school for writing, and we had a class there called Drama Lab, where we had this teacher. His name was Gary. I won't say his last name. I don't know why I'm protecting him. But the point of the class was like we would all write monologues or write scenes, and then he would call us up in front of everybody and like tear us apart, basically. Like, Adam, that scene had no conflict. It had no, and I'd be like, oh, okay. And now I look back on that, I'm like, that was actually the best training for being a writer of anything that I learned in grad school, because you have to have the thickest skin in the world to be in the arts as a job. Like you'll have your hopes dashed. You will like have projects that you think you're ready to go, and then somebody will like cancel it at the last minute. I mean, you just have, so as much as that story is terrible, I actually feel like it's a good training for like what you will inevitably go through as you go through your career, because it's a tough
totally.
business. Yeah. But so how did you pick yourself back up from that and go on to the next one and the next one?
I didn't do stand up again for like 3 or 4 months after that. I was like, maybe this isn't for me. And then I realized like, oh, Manhattan comedy is very, very different than Brooklyn comedy, and Manhattan
Yes.
mics are very different, and the people are very different. And so then I found Brooklyn mics and stuff like that and started doing that, and that felt a lot better. But even still, those mics were like, and still are, but like there was a few that like it was dead silent. It was like a Monday night at 9 p.m. and it was like you wait to go, and especially when you're like first starting out, like the buckets are rigged, and so like obviously people put their friends first, and then the people they don't know are at the end. And so like I'm waiting until like 11:30 to do my 3 minutes. There's no one there. It's complete silence, and I would walk off and I'd be like, that felt good. And I think it's just like I don't know. I think that because I've like always loved performing, and I will never stop performing, but because like that's never been like I need to be a star, I need to be a performer. I think I've always been like, yeah, I like doing this thing. Whereas I think for people who are like me as the entity is the whole thing, I think that makes it scarier. I think maybe that's what I tell myself to make myself feel better. But yeah.
So it's a performance. Well, it's interesting because you talked about doing improv, and I feel like because I did improv in college, and like what's fun about improv is you're not yourself, like you're playing a character. But to me, what makes stand up so terrifying is it's like your persona is the character. Like you are like revealing your inner soul in some way. I don't know. There's something very revealing. I mean, the greatest stand-up comics in some ways are often the most vulnerable, like the ones who just like, I just watched Bo Burnham's special where Inside, where it's like he's like gutting himself in this thing. So I mean, do you feel like when you're on stage, it makes me think of what that girl said to you, like were those stories true, but do you feel like you are performing as a version of yourself, or do you think you're trying to like mine yourself for the deepest, darkest truths?
I think it's funny because I like really, like friends who have met my family are always like, why don't you just stand up at your family? They're so odd. And I'll be like, I don't know, it doesn't feel right to do it at my family. But then the flip side of that is like, and I've opened up more, but like, especially like when I was like first moved to New York and was like on Grinder and whatever, I like didn't tell friends about hookups or whatever, didn't tell friends about guys because I was like, I don't know, I was like very closed off about it. And friends would come see me perform and they'd be like, this is where I come to find out about your sex life, like you won't tell us. And so it's true, it's like I would do stand up about like hookups and things like that, and my friends would be like, why won't you tell us but you'll tell all these strangers? And I was like, I don't know, because it's funny, but like I don't need to tell you that. You don't need to hear about like me like getting a blowjob at New York airport, like like I don't need to tell you that.
That's really interesting to me. So it's almost like the improv, I'm sorry, the stand-up stage is where like you can be free in a way, like you're like freeing another part of you that's otherwise repressed.
Yeah, I feel like it's like the judgment. It's like a mix because obviously like, there's judgment of your performance and judgment of if you're good or not. But then it's like there's no judgment of you as a person. It's like yeah, like Elizabeth Holmes or whatever her name is, like could go up and do stand up and people would be like, yeah, you're fine. Like that was funny, you know. Whereas
Yeah.
like the most evil like, and people go to these mics and like I sometimes think about that afterwards. Like I'll go to a show or like I'll do a show and I'll hear people talk about themselves. I'm like, you just made yourself sound really, really bad. That was amazing. Like,
Right.
you know, it's like a competition of who's worse.
But isn't it interesting, like with like Louis C.K., for example, like that he would like gut himself on stage and like talk about his demons, but then like he crossed that horrible line and revealed himself to be a terrible person to women. And now he goes to these venues where it's like basically Trump supporters in the audience.
Yeah.
It's like, but it's feel because as you were talking and saying how safe you feel, it makes me think it's also a function of being in Brooklyn and like performing in front of an audience that you
In these
know.
very queer spaces.
Yeah, which I think is really cool that like that exists for you, that like you can go to this place, share your innermost secrets and thoughts and feel supported, which you know it feels like a very modern thing.
It's really unique because it's like a lot of people who are older than me in comedy will say like you don't know what it was like
Yeah.
you're so lucky, it's so supportive, it's so like friendly, and it's so like queer friendly now, and I do definitely feel that, and I am very appreciative of that. And it's this weird space where it's like you would never cross a line in something that is like sexual or something like that, but then like I can make whatever Holocaust joke I want, you know, and no one is ever finding that offensive. So it's
That's
like
so
it's
funny.
weird how it's not like it's like PC, it's like the line just like is different. It's like, yeah, this is not offending anyone present, you know.
I actually, speaking of Second City, when I was in Emory, I went to Emory and in the improv troupe. We took a road trip over spring break to go to Second City to do a workshop. And I'll never forget, like we watched the Second City show that night and it was so funny and so good. And there was like a scene in a pizza parlor and one of the improv comedians like popped his head out of the imaginary oven and said, look, I'm a Holocaust Jew. And the audience like went silent. Like it was just like you could hear a pin drop and it was just the audience turned on him. And I just remember being shocked. I think I told this story on this podcast before, but it was just one of those moments where it's like anything is funny, but context seems to matter too. And just like,
Yeah.
and it was just so out of nowhere. But I think for you being Jewish and like irreverent, it's a totally different thing.
Yeah, I feel like I can like make a self-deprecating joke about like how I wouldn't have survived or something like that, and
Yeah.
people are okay with that.
Well, important question. So has your family ever seen you do stand up?
No, well, funny enough, no. My sister has, I think. I can't remember. She lives in New York, but my family has not. My dad actually was in town last week and was supposed to see me do a show, and then the show got canceled because of rain because it was an outdoor show, and so my dad didn't end up seeing me. And my dad's always like, "Do you have any material about me? Do you have any material about me?" I'm like, "Yes, but it's not. You're not gonna like it. Like not in a way that it offends you, but it's like you're not gonna find it fun. You know, I don't know.
Like what? Like what do you say about your dad?
I have, well, the bit that I've been doing recently with my dad is like how my dad, I just got broken up with a couple months ago, and how my dad like turned into Macklemore, like consoling me through it, being like, love is love, doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman, things like that. And so my dad was like, I told my dad that, and he's like, who is Macklemore? I was like, you don't, it does, that's exactly why it doesn't matter.
That's really funny. I've seen your stand up sometimes, like when you post it on social media, and sometimes like I feel like your dad, like I think you did one about like Olivia Rodrigo, something, and I knew who she was, but at the same time I'm like, I'm so old, like I'm like it's all these references where I need to like get with it. So
It's funny because like I feel like I'm like you're like I'm old to like be loving Olivia Rodrigo though, like that, like I'm like ancient to be loving her, and yet she's the only thing I care about.
well, let's bring it back to food. This is It's fun to hear all this. Like I'm very impressed that you have the courage and the chutzpah to do what you're doing. And actually we didn't talk about Sam B and all that, so like how did that come about?
Yeah, this comes out to being Jewish. Sorry, it's not about food. My bar mitzvah theme was like late night talk shows. So I've like
Oh yeah, I was
always
gonna
loved
ask what your
this.
bar mitzvah theme was. Okay.
Yeah, it was like talk. Yeah, it was talk shows in general, but like mostly late night. And so I've like always loved late night. And so I like ended up working at Sam B for a few years, and that was like, and the show I work at now is like late night adjacent. But I just like I interned there when I was in college, and then I ended up staying and working there for a few years. And it was like the most, honestly, like there's like nothing like fun to say about it. It was like the most formative experience of my life. And I'm really grateful for it. I left like 2 weeks before the pandemic.
Were you pitching jokes? I mean, were you in the writer's room? Like, what was your job there?
I was in social, so I was like
Okay.
so I like did jokes for social, but like I was doing all the digital stuff for the show.
Wow. And so when you do a joke for social, do you have to get it approved by like 20 different people? Like, how does that work with an account like that?
It gets approved. It gets approved. No, it was just like on Slack, and there was like a channel where you'd pitch jokes, and then
Uh,
Sam would go in, and if Sam liked a joke, she'd put a grandma emoji on it, and that meant it was okay to tweet. That it was like that was our system.
I
And
love that.
so I used to pitch a lot of like bar graphs and things like that, and Sam loved those. So those were like the most often things that Sam would approve from me.
What was the thing you got posted that you felt proudest of?
It was a bar graph about who during one of the Democratic debates had the most salt and pepper hair, and it was like not funny, but I like loved that it was a bar that we like posted this bar graph of it.
That's really funny. Okay, so back to food, and we're almost done, but we're not quite there. Tell me a little bit more about like the foods of your generation. Like, what are like the snack foods? Like, what are the things like your peer group eat? I feel like I'm like talking to you like you're an alien from another planet, but I do find it very interesting. So, like, like when you go out to dinner with your friends, or like even just like in a day, like what would you say are certain things that like people your age eat that other people don't eat?
I don't know if this is a generational thing, but I feel like my generation like very much fetishizes Trader Joe's.
Okay.
Like is very very into like every pre-made Trader Joe's thing, like everyone's always bringing cauliflower gnocchi to work, or like
Cauliflower
whatever.
again. Yeah. Wow. This is insane. So much cauliflower.
Maybe that is a thing of the generation. I don't know. I feel like the commoditization of Trader Joe's. Like I feel like people are always like, oh, like this is Trader Joe's, of course. So I feel like that is a really big thing. I don't know. I feel like in New York, it's like a lot of like people love matcha, and people love
Yes.
I like am very I maybe this is a young thing, but like I'm very very into dessert, and so like I look at a map and
I love dessert. That's an old thing too. Yeah.
I just like I look at a map, and the first thing I think is like what's the most irresponsibly expensive dessert I can buy, and so maybe I feel like I have a lot of friends who are like that too.
What are your go-to, like what would be a dessert where you're like, we have to get that?
Either donuts or ice cream are like I think would be my like we have to go.
Donuts?
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite donut in the city or in New York?
My favorite in the city is probably the blueberry one at Peter Pan Donuts in
Yeah.
Greenpoint. That one is
I knew
so
you were
good.
going to say Peter Pan. That's like the classic, like the
It's so
famous New York.
good.
Yeah. We have a donut place in LA that's not far from us called Colorado Donuts, and it's
I
incredible.
walked there when I was in LA a couple weeks ago.
That's so funny. Well, we like went on Postmates because we were a little hungover and ordered like 6 donuts. And if it's one of those things where I bit into this like buttermilk bar and it tasted like heaven. I was like, this is the best thing I've ever eaten. And then like an hour later, I felt like such shit. Like I felt disgusting and gross. So that's the thing about donuts. But do you ever make dessert at home?
Yeah, I like make a lot of like I'll make muffins and things like that more so. The issue is like I won't let dessert go bad either. Like I won't throw it out. So if I make a tin of muffins, I will like eat them all myself in 2 days. And so I went through a phase when I was making a lot of dessert at home. Like I was making cornbread a lot, like a few different kinds of cornbread. and I would really like eat the entire thing. So I like don't try to bake that much because I'm like I will eat it so fast right away.
Yeah, I was exactly the same way. Although it's funny, like once you start to realize you can give a lot of baked goods away, and people will love it, then you can bake more. So that's a good trick. Well, Zach, we started the podcast with what did you have for lunch, but what are you having for dinner tonight?
I don't know. I think I might have the other half of this sandwich. I'm going to see Wicked tonight, so I'm like, it's it's like I don't know if I'm going to see. I'll probably have a snack right before.
I feel like I had more gay friends in the audience of the opening night of Wicked than I think I have gay friends that have gone to Fire Island or Provincetown, like of all time. Like they were so, including my cookbook collaborator Gideon Glick was in the audience of Wicked on opening night. But like it was everyone on Twitter, everyone on Instagram. It's like a gay rite of passage,
jealous.
I guess. Yeah.
I went home for Yom Kippur and I was like, I'm the worst. Like this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me.
To miss Wicked opening night.
Oh my god! Everyone was literally the entire world was there. It looked like the best night on earth.
Do you feel like you're more of an Elphaba or more of a Galinda?
I think in life I'm more of a Glinda, but I would only play Elphaba.
Wow, tell me more about that.
I think that like I love like the affectedness of Elphaba, like how whiny she is, and she has the songs. I mean, like she has this,
yes.
Like she has the greatest songs of like the 2000s.
I think it's always true of like the more like evil character. Although she's not evil, she's actually kind of the hero. But like Javert in Les Mis has the best songs as far as I'm concerned, and Judas and Jesus Christ Superstar, which you may not have listened to as a very conservative Jew.
Oh, I love Jesus Christ Superstar.
It's funny because like everything I know about Christianity comes from Jesus Christ Superstar. Like I assume that everything in that musical is what is in the New Testament because I've never read the New Testament, but I'm sure it's gotten some things wrong. Like for example, I don't think they all sing and play electric guitar.
I'm pretty sure they should.
Yeah. Wait, so I wanted to ask you, we still have a little time left, with fasting. So when you fasted, are you like doing the whole, like, are you being reflective? Are you like
this year was hard because I was working. So I think work from home kind of broke that barrier because it was like I didn't fully take the day off because I was like working. And so I was reflective and I was like doing Zoom services with my mom because she didn't want to go in person. I don't think I was as reflective as I could have been this year, but normally I try to be. But I drink water. I think that it's insane to not drink water.
Oh, you have to drink water. So what are the Jewish holidays that you observe and which ones do you skip over?
I observe, like I'll always keep Passover. I know the funny thing is like Sukkot is like the most fun holiday, but I feel like I haven't celebrated it in a really long time.
You've never built a sukkah in your Park Slope backyard?
I don't have a backyard, but I do love. It's so weird that like Orthodox Williamsburg is the only place in New York where everyone has balconies, and I like love walking around there when they all have the sukkahs built around their balconies.
And it's a harvest holiday, right? Like, isn't that what Sukkot really is? I don't remember.
It's so fun, yeah. Like you like everyone like gets together and like it's like the harvest holiday, and you like when you're a kid, like there's fun games. Like I love Sukkot in theory, but I've not celebrated it. I feel like I'll always do something I'll always go to something for Purim too. Mm-hmm. My family's very big on Hanukkah. Like my mom also has 5 siblings, and so all of her sisters will come over, and like my cousins and I all will put our menorahs on a table, and like we'll like see whose menorah does the best, and it's always a huge fire hazard.
Wait, what do you mean whose menorah does the best? What does that mean?
So like we do this every year. We've been doing it since I was a kid, where it is always at my house too, where we put everyone brings their menorah. Like you bring your menorah to my mom's house, and we light candles all together, and there's like 10 menorahs on the table, and you do it all at once, and then we check in and see who's lasted the longest.
And what happens? Do you get like a prize, or it's just like a rite of
No, it's truly just it's just a moment of pride. It's like it's funny because like my aunt's like Winnie the Pooh menorah like does the best or something like that. But
I feel like your family started the Great Chicago Fire. I feel like it was
truly
that's very dangerous. Does your family make latkes at Hanukkah?
Yes, my family makes latkes. My mom makes a lot of latkes, and we always say that latkes don't count on the way if you're eating them on the way to the table. Like if you're eating them from the kitchen to the table, doesn't count. So you can eat as many as you want then.
Have you ever made that?
Yes, I've made them, but my mom My mom like always like does the whole food processor thing, but recently she's done something where she'll go to will go to the grocery store and make them cut all. Maybe she doesn't like knives too. Maybe that's what it is. She like will say she'll give them like the carrots and they'll shred everything for her at the grocery store.
Wow, your family is it's like there's like a real theme with like knives in your family. Like your mom and you are afraid. Your dad has a lot of pocket knives. Like something's going on with knives. Maybe when you were a child, you blocked it out of your memory, but like maybe like he was a knife thrower and he put you on a wheel and spun you around in front of an audience and threw knives at you.
That must be why they got divorced. Yeah, like it must be something like that.
Yeah. Well, not to brag, but in terms of latkes, I used to, before the pandemic, throw a latke party with my husband, and I would make 300 to 400 latkes and serve them to people. And the first year that I did it, Craig was like, we're in LA, like nobody's going to eat 300 latkes. Like that's never going to, like you're wasting your time. And sure enough, so the way I did it was like I fried them all and then I froze them all. And then at the party, I heated them up on a cookie sheet and then I started bringing them out. And people were fighting. Like I would pull the sheet out of the oven and it was like gay men and women, which was like 90% of the party, were like clamoring, like pushing their way through to grab them off the cookie sheet. So the next time I did it, I did like 400, and I made just like making 400 latkes over like a 5-day period.
Did you do the tinfoil thing in your kitchen?
Over the stove? No, I didn't do that. But it's more about like just the smell, like the onion. And actually the second time I did it, I put too much onion in the latkes. And so when people started coming over, I was heating them up and I was tearing it up. Like I had like, my eyes were red and puffy and I had like tears streaming down my face.
Oh my.
But I remember it's funny, like it felt more like Yom Kippur to me than Hanukkah, because it's just the ritual of like grating onions and like wringing them out over the sink. And it's just like, it was punishing, but also very rewarding.
That sounds incredible.
Yeah. So in terms of food, what's your favorite Jewish holiday?
Honestly, I love Passover. Like I love matzah. I love haroset. Like I love a seder, and I eat matzah year round. So I think I would say Passover.
It's funny. Craig has been with me for 15 years, and I've never hosted or taken him to a Passover seder.
Oh my gosh, I love seders. I think they're the most fun. It's the most theatrical of all the Jewish holidays too.
I feel like I just need to get like a Jewish holiday calendar superimposed on my iCal, so like I'll just know what's coming up. I think a lot of it had to do with also like my mother and grandmother like shaming me for not observing those holidays when I was growing up, because they'd be like, "What are you doing tonight?" I'd be like, "I'm going out to a movie." Like it's Rosh Hashanah. Like they would just like remind me, and I would feel really guilty. But guilt was a big part of it, which is probably why it feels free. This is like my therapy session now. Wait, so Zach, do you feel like we got through all of like your food stuff? Is there anything we skipped over? Cooking, eating, Court Street Grocers, cauliflower.
I mentioned dessert. Yeah, like I really, really, really like I like my number one source of loss of income is dessert. Like I will like be having the busiest day at work and I'll run to go get dessert. But I think we covered that.
Well, we got donuts, but what other desserts would you go get?
I love ice cream. Like I like truly like run and get ice cream every day, especially in the summer.
Where do you go?
I go to either Ample Hills, but now the Ample Hills owners have a new place in Prospect Heights. So I've been going to their new place, which is like definitely farther from my apartment, but like I will ride my bike there and make sure I'm there.
And what kind of flavor? What are your flavors?
They have a bunch. They have a morning in Paris flavor that's really good. It's like a croissant raspberry jam that's really good.
Morning in Paris. That's a great idea. Wow,
It's so good.
Yeah, croissant and raspberry jam. Love that. Keep going.
They have a marshmallow, but it's Cocoa Krispies instead of Rice Krispies. That's really good. I'm trying to think of my other favorites. I've always wanted to open a Jewish ice cream shop. Like I've always wanted to do like babka flavored ice cream, or like black and white cookie ice cream sandwiches, or like haroset sorbet or whatever. I've always wanted
rainbow
to like
cookie ice cream. Do you like rainbow cookies? Like
yes, exactly.
That would be so good. I wanted to open a restaurant. What was I going to call it? Well, my grandmother's name was Ronnie, and her last name was Brenner, so I was going to call it Ronnie Brenner's. And
I like that.
And but I would want it to feel like a Jewish grandmother's house who like used to travel the world, and like you saw like all her knickknacks and souvenirs, and like you served things like matzo ball soup, but like French food too, like a mixture of like Jewish, French, European. Do you want to invest in this restaurant?
Yes. So the sharks are in.
Okay. Well, Zach, thank you so much for stepping up and being my lunch therapy.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I truly was like so excited. I really, truly, I love your Substack. I think you're so awesome.
Oh, thank you for plugging my Substack. That's so nice. I've been trying to push it more lately, but it's, I don't want to be obnoxious about it. So that was a very good.
Have I told you this once on Instagram that like your tuna salad recipe is my favorite, and then you recently sent out a new tuna salad recipe, and I was like, this is so destabilizing because his other one was my favorite.
Wait, what were the differences? I knew when I took that picture, I was like, I know I've done this before, but I forgot what I put in the other one. Was it? I think there were more,
Your other
yeah.
one is like cornichons, lemon zest, lemon juice, celery with the celery leaves, mayo, tuna, red onion. There's maybe one more thing, but it's like the best, simplest recipe. And then I saw the one the other day, and I was like, well, now I have to make this and try this.
Well, honestly, I just make whatever I have in the fridge, so that's the only difference. Well, I'm very flattered. If I had dill, I would have added dill too, just so you know.
Okay, good.
All right. Well, Zach, have a great weekend, and thanks again for doing this.
Thank you so much for having me. Bye.
All right. I'll talk to you later. Bye.